Good morning and welcome to the Marketing Rocketfuel podcast. My name is Michael. This is Drew. Drew, how are you?
Hey, good morning, Michael. It's so great to be back with you. We're in a whole new year, and 2023 is going to be amazing. I'm so excited about this year.
Before we get into anything, I gotta ask, are you a resolution guy?
Resolutions. Ooh, that's a good question because what I like to do, I like to set goals because most people fail their New Year's resolution by about 12:01 a.m. So I like to set goals every year of what we want to accomplish this year. And I'm really big on SMART goals. You know, we want to make them strategic. We want to make them time-based, achievable, all that stuff. So if you don't know what SMART goals are, Google it. That's not what this podcast is about today. But I've set some goals for my business. Obviously I'm not going to talk the finances of my company or anything like that in the public eye. But one goal I've got, I'm 18 weeks from the next marathon. So I'm on a training regimen for that now. Excited about that. I'm going to go up to Cincinnati, Ohio to the Flying Pig Marathon on May 7th. And if you're watching this shortly after we publish this, then you've still got time to train. So I'd love to see somebody up there. If you're up at the Flying Pig Marathon and you run into me, I'd love to hear if you've seen us on the podcast.
Awesome. Yeah. Have you ever heard of Cam Hanes?
Is that the guy that runs a marathon every day?
Every day. He's a bow hunter, so he makes the rounds on like big podcasts, like more than tens of people are listening. He wakes up. He has a full-time job, but he wakes up every day and runs the equivalent or near equivalent of a marathon every single day. And to me, that makes my knees and back hurt just thinking about it.
Well, when I think about how long it took me to run the last marathon, and honestly, I run several times a week, but most days, I mean, it's hard to carve out 20 minutes to an hour to go for a run. Especially when you're running the company and you're trying to manage people, you're trying to manage projects, and you've got so much going on, it's hard to carve out that time. And when I think about how long it takes to run a marathon, even if you're really fast and you've got like a 3-hour marathon time, man, that's 3 hours every day.
Every day. And it's one of the reasons why I hardly ever play. I used to love playing golf, but now it's like, do I really have 5 to 6 hours? Because I mean, people say, oh no, golf is just a 4-hour just a 4-hour round. It's not just a 4-hour round. You've got, especially if it's like client golf, you go, it's the travel to the course, it's prepping, it's playing the round, and good gracious, if you play a 4-hour round these days, then woohoo.
Well, and it's the lunch or dinner afterwards. It's the schmoozing and all that
absolutely.
Stuff. Schmooze. How do you say that?
Schmooze.
I can't get that word out today, so that's all right.
Well, Drew, speaking of time and things that sort of steal our time, whether it's training for your upcoming marathon or not playing golf like I used to. Today, what are we talking about today with regards to that? Trying to segue into what we're talking about today.
Well, today we're going to talk about the single biggest mistake that mid-sized company CEOs make. And this is something that we see over and over and over again, and it's the one thing that really derails your success when you're transitioning from that micro business, that small business, to that mid-sized company, and it derails so many people, and it bumps them back into that smaller business stage. And
that mistake is not hiring escape plan marketing, right?
No, that's not that mistake.
Oh, okay. It's not that mistake.
That's not the mistake. Holy cow! I almost said that's not the mistake you want to make. No, that is the path that you want to take. I guess. So
Oh, like what you
there you
did
go.
there. What is this
Let's
mistake
let's
that you're
let's make this totally Dr. Seuss here today.
So what is this mistake we're talking about then?
Okay, so we've talked before about trying to see your company from the inside is almost like trying to read the label from inside of a bottle. Like you're inside of
Yes.
this bottle and you're trying to see what it is. But this is the one thing that keeps your people in that bottle, and it's
Yes.
the CEO bottleneck. And this is the one thing that happens time and time and time again in a company that keeps not only you from being successful, but it keeps your people from being able to do the jobs that you hired them to do. Um, Before we get into exactly what that bottleneck looks like, though, let's talk about what does a mid-sized company CEO look like? What's the typical profile of this individual, because it's different than like a mega corporation CEO, and it's different than a mom and pop small business. It's kind of it's a sweet spot in there as your company's growing. So these are typically people that started a company themselves. Maybe you started out of your garage, maybe you started it out of your home. You left corporate life, stopped working for the man, and said, I can do this better myself. And so you start a company, and that company starts to grow. And then the next thing you know, you find yourself with facilities and employees and lots more customers and all of these things that you've got to manage. And you're not the guy making the widgets anymore.
Right. Right.
That's when you become that mid-sized company CEO. And at Escape Plan, when we're talking about this type of client, we're typically saying you've got between 10 and 200 employees. Um, you you are typically making between 1 and 50 million on your annual sales goal. That's not necessarily your net profits, but that's what your sales goals are. It's somewhere around that range. And your company is getting bigger than you. Your company has grown beyond yourself. Now, what happens in there is you've got to make that transition beyond yourself. And that's what a lot of mid-sized company CEOs struggle with, because we started this company and I know how to do everything in this company. And so nobody can do it better than me. And
Right.
that's the typical mindset. And I've struggled with that myself as an agency owner, because when we first started this company 6-7 years ago, I was just a freelancer. I started it as a freelancer and grew it beyond myself. And it was hard. It's hard to let go of things. It's still hard to let go of things. So I get
Yes.
that. And so this is by no means saying, hey, CEOs, we disrespect you or anything like that. No, tons and tons of respect for CEOs who start these companies, because nobody knows what you know.
Right.
But for your company to grow, you have to get beyond yourself. And Michael, we've talked about what that looks like, some of the things that these CEOs will struggle with.
Yeah, so I'm going to take it from a different direction. When I started my agency, I was given, and this was good advice. I actually gave myself the title CEO, and the reason why is smaller companies, when you are trying to uh, sort of level up your clientele and you want to meet with larger companies, those larger companies, that leadership level wants to meet with other leadership. They don't want to meet with a business development person,
Right.
and so and many times these smaller companies that become mid-sized and larger companies, that CEO position is just a label. There's no functionality behind that. That's just a function of trying to grow the thing and getting in front of the right people to grow your business. With that said, because of that, because you're not a large company that goes and headhunts an established CEO.
Mhm.
That label is the duties for that label can get kind of squishy,
They
and so
can.
you get caught up into the inertia of the day to day, and you just happen to have CEO on your desk or on your business card, and so that transition you're talking about has to be intentional because especially if you're growing, if you're in a growth stage company, if you're growing, all of a sudden you look around and you're signing 10 to 12 paychecks with people depending on you, and
Right.
then you've got a finance person that you might be outsourcing uh, coming to you with reports. You've got quite possibly a digital marketing agency that is doing work for you and asking for your input and giving you information so you can make business decisions. All of a sudden, you can't do those things, those high level strategic um, thought activities. You can't do that and run a business at the same time. You just get caught in the weeds.
Right.
And we talked about this in the pregame. There's a reason why the quarterback, if you ever see a quarterback or the linebacker
Hmm.
for the defense, you ever see them cover the ear holes on their helmet? It's because they're getting information from the press box, and that
That's
press
right.
box is hundreds of feet above the playing field to where they could see what's going on.
Right.
There's a reason why generals, they're not on the front lines.
Hmm.
They're at the forward operating base, getting information from everywhere piped into them so that they can make the best decision for their team. And this needs to be an intentional thing. This can't be a thing that just sort of happens. You don't fall backwards into that sort of thinking. That's something that you have to plan for. And unfortunately, what we're talking about is we're talking about breaking habits and patterns that
Right.
CEOs are in, that they need help getting out of this
Well,
bottleneck.
and a lot of CEOs, when they'll start a company, and to be clear with your analogy, the CEO is not the quarterback role. They're the guy in the press box.
Yes.
They're the ones up top with the sky level view that can
Yes.
see everything. And so,
Yes.
because a lot of people get this confused, and CEOs, a lot of times what they do is instead of acting as a business owner, they've just created another job for themselves.
Yes. Yep.
And a lot of times they've created 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 jobs for themselves,
Yes.
and they get so frazzled because they're doing too much.
Yes.
And you got to realize, as a CEO, as a business owner, your role has changed, and a lot of companies maybe don't even want to grow to that point, beyond Michael, you tend to call this a lifestyle business,
Yes.
a business where you're running the dry cleaners,
Mm-hmm.
and you're the guy at the cleaners, you're the owner, and you don't want it to grow beyond you and your wife and your kids. And that's okay. If that's
It
the
is
type of business that you want to
absolutely
do, that's
okay.
perfectly fine. There
Yes.
are tons and tons and tons of those businesses that build this country. Um, but we're talking about those growth stage businesses where you do want this business to go beyond yourself. And you have to, as the owner, as the CEO, when you stamp that label on you, you need to be focused more on the strategy, the vision, the overarching management, not the micromanagement, but the overarching management of your company.
Right.
And so, but we're going to talk about, let's move into what it looks like when that doesn't happen.
Oh, I can
Because
tell you. There's just, and I love this bit, and I love this comedian. His name's Jim Gaffigan. I love him
I
because
love
he's
him.
hilarious and he's fairly clean. But he has this bit, and he says, "Do you know what it's like having and four, or at this time I think it was 5 kids or 4 kids?" I was like, "Do you know what
Mhm.
it's like having 5 kids?" He's like, "Imagine yourself drowning, and then somebody hands you a baby. That's what it's like. And that many times this is what this feels like,
Yeah.
because it's just whack-a-mole.
Hmm.
Everything's important, everything's urgent, and then when everything's important and urgent, then nothing is
Right.
important and urgent. And newsflash, I do want to back up a little bit. Newsflash, CEOs out there, if you think that you're the only one that can do the things in your company and no one can do them better than you, get over yourself. That's not true. There are folks that are out there that may not be able to do it as good as you the first time, but they will be able to do it as good as you. There's probably a handful of things, Drew, myself, when I own my business, there's only probably 1, 2, 3 things that you should be doing as a CEO. Everything else, unload them as fast as you can.
Yeah, and in fact, it's a rule in our company that if I'm going to hire somebody, they have to at least have the potential to do it better than I can.
Yeah.
And usually when I hire them in, they're already capable of doing it better than I am. And that's one of those things where, as a CEO, you've got to check your ego at the door.
You do.
And you've got to realize that, you can either, pat yourself on the back and try to make yourself look big. And we've all seen these posers that want to go and look like they have more money than they have and look like they're more important than they have. And that's not what a real CEO is. That's somebody who's a wannabe.
Right.
Okay. You want to be the CEO, if you want your company to grow, that recognizes talent, brings talent in, and turns them loose to do the job. And you don't want to be the one that doesn't trust the people you hire to actually do the job.
Yes.
And you also don't want to be the one that can't let go of those things. Now, I want to clarify something. This is not an instant turnover process. As your company's growing, you're not going to just one day say, you know what, I'm not doing any of these 15 tasks over here that I was doing yesterday.
Right.
I'm only going to do these 3 tasks. That's not the way it works.
No.
Because, as your company evolves, you're letting go of those tasks one by one.
Right.
You're a little bit at a time. There are, and I can use myself as an example because I have a small business and we actually just hired a new employee for the new year, and I'm going to have to let go of a little bit more that I was doing before because I brought in this employee specifically to take on those tasks. But when I first started doing this business, I was the guy that made the websites, the guy that did any kind of graphic design, the guy that swept the floors, the guy that plunged the toilet, the guy that did everything, made the coffee. I still make the coffee, but because usually I'm the first one here.
There you go.
But as you grow in your company, you're going to be letting go of those things one by one. And a lot of times people will start their company because they're like, I like doing this thing.
Yes.
And I want to keep doing that thing. Well, that's okay. But if you want your company to grow beyond a lifestyle business to a place where it's beyond yourself, then you're going to have to let go of that to an extent. You may still perform one of these things, but you may just do it kind of on the side as a hobby.
Right.
You may do it as far as like with passion projects. And that's usually what my role is. Like if we get a passion project, I'm usually working on that because I like to keep my creativity fresh.
Right.
But I'm not necessarily doing that for for all of our clients. Okay, so I kind of went roundabout. What happens though when a CEO can't let go of these things, when a CEO is in the weeds doing these things? Let's talk a little bit about that because it can really kill not only your productivity, but it kills everybody else's productivity that you're working with.
Well, I mean, I'm an example. I no longer have my company. I mean, this is what can happen, folks.
Yeah.
I mean, in our notes here, we're looking at, we talk about burnout. We talk about lack of creativity. We're talking
Mhm.
about missed opportunities. These are real consequences of this bottleneck, you
That's
know,
right.
because what will happen is you will cease to grow and just get into survival mode. And
Right.
when you're in survival mode, the mindset changes to almost one of scarcity, not of one of generosity and abundance. I talk about it a lot about margin. When your life, when your business is pegged out and you have zero margin, then there is no room for creativity.
Mhm.
You miss the opportunities that are right in front of you because you're inside this bottle, and it could adversely affect your business. It could adversely affect your life. I mean, there are plenty of CEOs out there that feel like they're on an island
Mhm.
because many times they've created that island and they're by themselves and they suffer from depression and just anxiety. And we forget, I meet CEOs all the time, and the label with that label comes a lot of pressure, and sometimes they feel like they're by themselves.
Right.
Absolutely. So the effects of this can be both personal and professional, and both of those the effects of this can be devastating.
Well, and I can tell you from a marketing agency perspective, working with a company where the CEO is too far in the weeds of the marketing efforts, what typically happens is you have to go through the CEO for every single approval.
Yes.
And or you're waiting on the CEO for some critical piece of information to be able to finish a project. And I've been in both of these situations several times where we go so far down the road with a project, and we're getting paid. When you're working with a marketing agency, here's a newsflash: you have to pay the marketing agency.
Oh, very
And
nice.
what I've seen happen, and I'm thinking of a couple of different companies that we worked with where this was the case, where the CEO had this great idea, and CEOs should be doing vision. Vision is really great for CEOs. But once you communicate that vision, you need to turn people loose to accomplish that vision and empower people to make those approvals. And what would happen is, the CEO says, okay, hey, I want to do this thing, but I don't want anybody else to get into our domain registration account to be able to point the domain to the website. That's one example. And that's
Yeesh.
one of those silly little things that why would the CEO of a $10 million company be concerned about domain registrations? An $8, $15 a year domain registration.
Yeah.
Why would the CEO be engaged in that activity? That's something that clearly doesn't require their level of skill set. It clearly doesn't require their level of security, if it will. And newsflash number two here: CEOs generally have the worst passwords. So if you're concerned about the security, let somebody
Guilty.
else do it. Let somebody else do that because, oh man, I can't. And they're usually
No.
the first ones that tell you their password. That's the crazy thing. It's like, oh, here it is. It's on this sticky note that's sitting on
Yes.
the front of the computer.
Yeah.
Um,
The coffee
yeah,
stained sticky note password
that's right.
thingy.
It's got the
Yes.
little coffee splatter.
Yep.
Like CSI could
Yes.
analyze this thing.
Yep.
Um, but that's one of those areas where you get so far down the road on a project, and you're waiting on something, and
Hmm.
it's frustrating for the agency because they want to do good work. If you're working with an agency,
Right.
typically they want to complete projects for you.
That's nice.
If they don't, then you need to hire another agency.
Right.
Um, and even if you're not working with an agency, if you've got your own marketing department or your marketing director, it gets frustrating for them because you do not give them the power that they need to accomplish the task you've asked them to accomplish.
Right.
And that's the most frustrating thing. And then you're going to wind up not only having to do things yourself that you're paying other people to do, But then you're going to wind up with turnover because people aren't going to stay in that type of environment. Or if they do, they're not going to give you their best because they're not going to feel empowered to do their best.
Right.
And I don't know about you, but I don't have unlimited funds in my company. And if I'm paying somebody to do a job, I want them to give their best to it. And I want to get my money's worth out of that. And
Absolutely.
so, as the CEO, you should want your people to be turned loose to do that. Now, like I said before, it's a transition. You're not going to instantly just hire somebody in and say, okay, here you go. You're going to, you want to transition things away. You want to make sure you onboard people correctly or
Yes.
onboard your agency correctly, so that they can do the job. But give them the information that they need to do the job. Don't withhold things from your people. Don't try to be the one who solves all the little itty bitty problems in the middle of it.
Right.
Let somebody else solve those problems. They won't do it the way that you would, but they'll get it done. And often they will get it done in a way that's better than what you would have come up with. And that's hard to take with our egos, because it's like, I started this company. I know everything there is to know about this company. And it's hard to take that somebody else could solve a problem better than we could. But
Right.
usually that's the case.
Right.
And because they're not looking at it from inside that bottle.
Absolutely. It's one of the reasons why outsourcing marketing and maybe even other things outside of what your core business is effective.
Like accounting is a big part of this.
Yes.
Outsourcing to a CPA firm. That's something that we do. And my accountant is great. They know exactly what they're doing. They catch things that we never would have caught, and it's important to do that because I am not a CPA.
No.
And
No, thank
nobody
you.
in my company is a CPA.
No.
We are a creative company, and creative is not what you want to get with your finances.
No. You want the
Especially not
classic.
when it comes to
Yeah,
taxes and
absolutely.
payroll and stuff like that. The people don't want to get you getting creative with their payroll checks.
No. So
So
let's talk about how to get out of this bottleneck.
right.
You've already touched on a couple things. This is not just add water to it and just instant sort of it's there. We have we talked about this, that there are certain things you could put in place. One of the things that we talked about that dovetails into this is, I don't care if it's a lifestyle business. I don't care if you don't want to do anything except do this business so it allows you to live your lifestyle, which is the definition of a lifestyle business. If I had to do it over again and spin up my agency, I would structure it as if I was going to sell that business one day. There are certain things that you could do that will make this transition of getting out of this CEO bottleneck easier. And what are those things, Drew?
Well, I mean, if you think about this, like if you think about your company as, what would it look like without me?
Boom.
That's an important thing. And and it takes a while to get there. It's like I said, it's not an instant thing. But if you start setting up processes so that you can deliver the same deliverable time and time again, that same level of service time and time again, if you structure your company with key personnel in key positions, and clearly define what those roles are.
Right.
And then here's the trick. You have to respect those roles. You have to respect those processes. And if the processes are not working, which, usually it's going to take a few tries to get this right. But if your processes are not working, revisit that with the people you put in place to do those things, and talk about how you can make those processes work better. It's a constant refining, which you as the CEO should be overall that, not in the weeds doing every little piece of the process. I think the best, most enlightening book I've ever read on becoming the CEO of a company is The E-Myth Revisited by
Love
Michael
that
Gerber.
book. Love that
If
book.
you have never read that book, or even if you have read that book, go back and reread it. Listen to it on Audible. You can probably even find a version of it someplace on YouTube, but I'm not going to promote that. Seriously, go use your Audible credit and get this book. It will save your life.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, it can save your life because so many people suffer so much burnout, so much frustration, so much depression, trying to run their business, spinning their wheels, not getting any results. And this book specifically tells you how to be the CEO, the entrepreneur in your business, to where you're not the chief cook and bottle washer all the time.
Right. I mean, you touched on this. I mean, let's unpack just onboarding.
Right.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine a mid-size or large company where the CEO is onboarding every new employee? That I mean, it's unimaginable, right? I mean,
Well,
could you
I'm thinking
imagine?
about like if there's a call center in a company, um, and you've got your CSR manager, your customer service representative manager
Mhm.
there, and their job is to oversee the people who are answering the phones. And if you bring in a new CSR, the CEO of the company is not the one sitting down next to them on the phone.
No,
Now, if you don't have a CSR manager and you're hiring your first customer service representative, maybe you are doing that.
of course.
But at that point, you stop answering the phones and let that person answer the
Yes.
phones. I'm
Yes.
actually, one of my clients is actually going through this process right now, and it's a transition because they were used to answering the phones,
Mm-hmm.
and now they have somebody else answering the phones. That's why that analogy just popped into my head. But
Yes.
um, and it's a transition, but they're learning to do it because they want their company to grow.
Right.
Um, and so if you've got a marketing agency you're working with, give them the vision and let them accomplish that vision for you.
Yeah.
If you've got a marketing director, like we talked about on the last episode, share your vision with them and give them the power to make those approvals, to hire out the people they need to hire out, the companies outsource what they need to outsource, and get the job done. Give them a budget, give them parameters, but let them do their job.
Yes.
And Michael, you have a really great quote that you say a lot, and I'm going to let you go ahead and say it about what happens if you're the guy.
Yeah, Drew. I mean, I say it and I absolutely believe it. If you are the talent in your company, you'll never be able to quit. You have literally painted yourself into a corner, and now if you don't work, the company grinds to a halt. It will be almost impossible to sell the company
Well, and
because
and I like to say it like this: you'll have no escape plan.
whoa, very
Whoa,
nice.
it's almost like I named my company for a reason, you
There
know.
you go. Yeah, I
And
mean, you there's literally no exit strategy.
right,
You are the talent. You go with the company goes where you go, the company goes. And look, that sounds great. That makes you feel all warm and fuzzy and powerful. But what happens when you want to take a day off? What happens if you want to take a month off? I mean,
right.
what happens when you want to retire? Then the company just shrivels up and dies, and you just look at all of the people that you've hired along the way and say, all right, bye, go and find something else. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
or
just,
you have to go get another job. You have to go
boom.
be a Walmart greeter or something,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
And I
Not
don't
a
know
good
about you,
place to
that's
be.
not how I want to spend my retirement. So,
No, no.
so let's talk about what's our action tip this week, um, or this month, whenever we're doing these things. Man, I got so turned around on that last thing trying to figure out our quotes, and so let's talk about our action tip of the month here. So, as a CEO, how are you getting in the way of your own success? And this is going to take some deep dive into yourself. If you're like me, I journal. And so start kind of identifying things, write things down. What are you doing right now that's an activity that's keeping you from being successful? Or that's keeping you from growing the company to the place where you want it to be? And what are you doing right now that would keep your company from functioning if you weren't doing it?
Yeah. I would,
And
this is a challenging action tip. And
mhm.
Drew, have you ever taken like the Myers-Briggs or any of
Oh
these
yeah,
profiling tests?
right.
What I've heard that the follow-up to these tests is have somebody that you love and trust take that test as if they were you, um,
Oh, I've
which
never heard
will
that before.
mirror who, it will give you an idea of how these tests give you some insight on who you are, but having somebody else take the test as if they were you will give you some insight on how the world sees you. I would
And that's
challenge.
interesting because I have heard about the studies on people influencing their own test with their own cognitive biases.
Yes.
Because you answer the questions the way you think they ought to be answered, not the
Right.
way you actually would do it.
Absolutely. So, with this action tip, I would challenge any CEO out there to to put a survey out there with their the people in their company that know and trust them, and have them answer this question as well. How am I, as your CEO, getting in the way of this company being a success? And give and empower them to be brutally honest.
Right.
You can make it anonymous. You can make it to where there's zero retribution for any sort of
Right.
truth that you don't like. But you gotta get these answers out there, and then you gotta sort of put them on the stove and reduce them down to some action items to where you can
And you have to
take.
own it.
Yes.
And when you're in a mid-sized company, I mean, we talked about 10 to 200 employees, but if you got 15 people in your company, you're probably going to know who wrote what, even if it's
Right.
anonymous.
Yeah.
But you've got to be humble enough to own your own mistakes, and be humble enough to say, you know what, this is an area where I'm failing, where I need to improve.
Yeah.
And somebody's recognizing that, and I want to acknowledge and thank them for their honesty. They're
Mm-hmm.
not out to get you because they want your company to succeed as much as you do.
Right.
And so you got to realize that this is not, hate on the boss. This is, I'm making you aware of these things because I genuinely care about your company.
Right.
And so you want to make sure that you're not taking that, just so personally that you're just mad at everybody in your company. Oh, everybody hates me, and I'm not going to show up to work today.
Right.
Realize that these are tips that they're hard, but they will help make you more successful.
Yeah, Craig Groeschel. He's, I don't know if you know who he is. He's like the lead pastor of a big church. They came up with the Bible app, the U version app,
Oh
and
yeah.
he has a leadership podcast, and I love what he says about leadership, and it applies here. He's like, as a leader, the people will follow you not because you're right, but because you're relatable.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no better way at becoming relatable than to ask for honest feedback, not get offended by it, and then act on that honest feedback for
That's
the
right.
better. So,
All right. So, hey, we're running out of time here on this podcast, and I do want to remind you, hey, if this is your first time with us, or if it's your 50th time with us, and you haven't liked, subscribed, commented, all of that stuff, be sure and like, subscribe, and comment. Hit the little bell there so you know whenever we have a new podcast available. By the way, if you're watching on YouTube, this podcast is also available to listen to on your favorite podcast platform. So we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor Podcasts. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, we're available. So if you want to listen to this in your car, listen to this in the shower, wherever you want to listen to a podcast, we are there.
awesome. So, Drew, before we close things out, what do we have to look forward to for next episode?
So next time, we're going to be talking about another member of your marketing team that is grossly misunderstood. The people just don't know what this person does. And it's critical to your company's success. And that is the social media coordinator. Social media is one of those things. Most of your mid-sized company CEOs are about our age, Michael, and we didn't have social media when we were growing up.
No, thank goodness.
And it wasn't invented until we were well into our careers. And so so this is often misunderstood by business owners and even the people who have to hire the social media coordinators. And so we're going to unpack what that social media coordinator is, what they do, and how they can help grow your business.
Awesome. Well, Drew, thank you. I love spending the morning talking marketing with you. Any parting shots on our way out here?
Hey, if you're finding yourself stuck in your business with 15 jobs and you're still trying to grow your company, reach out to us at Escape Plan Marketing. You can find us at escapeplanmarketing.com. There's a link in the description. And reach out to us for a discovery call. We'll see if we might be a good fit to help you.
Awesome. Thanks, Drew. We'll talk to you next time.
All right. Have a great month, everybody.